Hello all, and welcome to the championship edition of the Citizen NFL podcast. I'm Justin Ritzel, your host, joined as always by Robert Harding and Chris Sciria. Guys, I imagine you're as sick of the Patriots as I am.
Well, we're fans of AFC East teams, so we see the Patriots. I've
never been a person who said like, "Oh, they're from my division. I have to root for them." BS. If it ain't my team, I'm not rooting for somebody else in my division. No way.
No. I'm right there with you, and I'm also dealing with something like that on the NFC side.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot to dive into. Pretty fantastic weekend of football, or at least a fantastic Sunday of football.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, let's just jump right into it. Obviously, the big play, probably the best game of the weekend was Saints-Vikings, and everybody's looking for a nice name for this miraculous game. Robert, what's the best name you've heard for the Stephon Diggs touchdown to break the Saints' hearts?
What was it? There was one. Now I can't think of it on the podcast. There was one someone threw out on Twitter that was pretty good. I've seen a lot of like Minnesota Miracle in Minneapolis, that kind of.
I feel like every good play can't have Miracle in it. I mean,
right,
come on.
Right, like Miracle on Ice. You think of that, but yeah, there was one, and I wish I could remember it. Maybe I will by the end of the podcast. But it was a good one. It was unique. It wasn't a spinoff of some miracle, but yeah. Can't think of it right now.
Yeah. Minnesota Miracle seems to be the one that's sticking because Fanatics is already selling T-shirts with that on it. So
brand.
I think that's been taken now as the name for the play, and there's alliteration there, so that helps. And so, but yeah, I don't have anything better than what Minnesota Miracle is. So,
I mean, we've had some crazy finishes to playoff games in recent years. Where does this stand among the Seahawks passing at the 1 yard line, the overtime game last year, 2014 NFC Championship between the Packers and Seahawks was a crazy game. I mean, we could go on and on. Where does this stack up in your mind, Chris?
Well, I mean, look, it ended. I mean, that was the last play of the game. I mean, all those other games, I mean, unless it's overtime. It wasn't the exact end of the game. There was a little bit after that. So I think for the finish, absolutely this one's number one. It's funny because last night I was on Twitter and I saw this NFL Films clip that like the top playoff finishes and it said of all time. And there was only one from before 2000, I believe. And it was the Immaculate Reception. Everything else was like 2000 and after. Music City Miracle, the most of them, a lot of them were involving the Packers. I was like,
and sadly we have not come out on top in many of those games.
And there was the Seahawks game. It was amazing. Like how many? I mean, like what about like when the Dolphins beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day, 1971, in double overtime, the longest game in NFL history. It's still the longest game in NFL history. How is that not included? I mean, that had a pretty good finish. So I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, the finish makes it number one in that aspect, okay? Because it ended. I mean, that was the last play of the game. You had to score on that play, or you're eliminated. The other games, I mean, there was more stuff going on after it. It led to a tie. There was overtime. I mean, this was like all or nothing. So I think from that standpoint, this game has to be number one. I mean, you could say the first half wasn't that good because New Orleans was trailing 17-0. Not that great a game, but in the second half, obviously, it turned around and turned into a great game. But the thing is, if you go by that standard, do we go by like, oh, this game was the best because it had a great second half and a great finish? Or do we pick another game where like, hey, from the beginning of the game, it went back and forth and we saw, it was never a blowout from any standpoint. It was close the whole way, nip and tuck. So So there's different ways you can judge them, but for me, I think that for the last 10 years, this was the best playoff game, because of the ending more than anything else.
I think to speak to this kind of the list you're talking about of all these games really since 2000 that have been insane, I'm sure part of it is recency bias.
Yeah.
And part of it is that just all these teams are really so even. Mm-hmm. There's not really that big of a difference between the number 1 seed and the number 6 seed these days. So it just kind of lends itself to having these tighter games.
I mean, I'm just interrupting for a second, but speaking as a Dolphins fan, I mean,
you're a Dolphins fan?
Yeah, I know.
No,
so, I'm gonna bring up something that Dolphin fans, for us old enough to remember, was a horrible moment. But if you've ever heard of the game called the Sea of Hands, that was the 1974 divisional playoff round. The Dolphins are playing in Oakland against the Raiders, and Miami scores late. They get a kickoff return for a touchdown, and they take the lead. And that Miami was going for their 4th straight Super Bowl that year, by the way. And the Raiders came back with Kenny Stabler, and Stabler was getting sacked. He was in the process of getting sacked, and he was going down. And before his knees touched the ground, he got the ball off. It was about a 10-yard pass to Clarence Davis, who caught it in the end zone. And literally there were a sea of hands going for that ball because there was like 2 or 3 Dolphin defenders on top of him. And Clarence Davis came down with it, and that was the end of the Dolphins dynasty. So, I mean, you could say that's a pretty darn good finish when you think of it that way, but didn't even get mentioned on that video. So
sad.
Yeah, I know it breaks your heart. Like those 4 Super Bowl
I'd
losses.
put it number 1.
I think we were definitely, or say we, I wasn't around. Robert, you weren't around. Chris, you were around.
Yeah, I wasn't around. I was 7.
Football fans in those days were definitely better at coming up with fun names. I mean, Sea of Hands, Holy Roller.
Yeah.
Could go on and on. Obviously, the Immaculate Reception.
The catch.
Holy Scholar, am I right?
The catch. The drive. I mean, yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah. Now everything's just a miracle,
Yeah.
A miracle in Minnesota, a miracle in Motown. Come on. Let's get a little more original here, people.
Yeah.
So I want your guys' opinion on one thing with this game. So I personally would consider Minnesota among probably the 3 teams in the NFL that are probably the most tortured fan bases. Mm-hmm. Right there along with obviously the Bills, and then I'd probably throw the Browns in there. Browns obviously recent is as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
Do you buy this thought that all it takes is one play like that to go your way for you to kind of just swing the fortunes of your franchise, or do you think there's more to it?
No, there's more to it. I think back to when the Bills came back against Houston, the comeback game, and Bills fans probably felt at the time. I can't remember. I was still pretty young, but there might have been the sense from some people that team of destiny. We made this comeback. If we could do this, we can do anything, and that's for the moment. And I think in this case, with this touchdown, it was one moment. It was a great moment, and it certainly puts them in a position to go on. But they've got a tough road ahead. So, playing in Philadelphia isn't going to be easy, especially against that defense. And then if they make it past them, then you either play a real tough Jacksonville team or New England, a semi-dynasty in their own right. So I'm not buying that. I think they still have some work to do. It's a great moment, but I wouldn't get my hopes up over that one play.
And maybe I'm being a little early here, but if Minnesota does win and go to the Super Bowl, it's not like that stadium is going to be like a Minnesota home game. That the way they break down the tickets for sale, it's not like they're all going to be available to Minnesota fans. I mean, there will be some Minnesota season ticket holders who will have the option to buy tickets, and they will definitely go. But every team gets a certain allotment of tickets, and certain tickets go to corporate sponsors and things like that. So, I mean, if they're on the secondary market and a Minnesota fan wants to step up and pay thousands of dollars, that's fine. And now that being said, I think that the stadium will be favor. It'll be pro Minnesota, no doubt about that. But this is not going to be a Minnesota home game where 95% of the fans are Vikings fans. It will not be like that.
You're awful confident.
Well, I'm just saying. No. I'm just look.
Chance to win the Super Bowl at home, people will be paying a pretty penny for those tickets.
And
people are going to be selling those.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's for some people going to a Super Bowl is like a bucket list thing. I mean, let's just say that you're, Joe Fan from Podunk, Idaho, okay, and you've always dreamed about going to the Super Bowl, and you're going this year. And you don't care who's playing. You don't have a favorite. You just want to go to the Super Bowl. You don't care who's playing in it. Are you going to sell your tickets? Are you going to do that? I don't think so. I think if you're that serious about going to the game, then you're going to go to the game. And you're not going to sell your tickets. I mean, we'll see.
I think, like you said, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I think whatever team represents the NFC is going to have way more of kind of the home field feel than the AFC because. I mean, the Eagles fans, they might not be hosting the Super Bowl, but those fans are going to do everything they can to get into that game if the Eagles make it. The Jaguars, no offense to them, but that's obviously not one of the bigger fan bases in the NFL. I mean,
they don't really travel.
Their owner, Khan, had to give away, it was a very nice gesture of him, but he gave away tickets to... I think homeless people around
there were refugees, troops.
Well, I don't think they were having a hard time selling tickets. I mean, remember they had to pull the tarps off the tops of the top rows of the stadium.
But they do during the regular season. They have to.
I think Khan was just doing that to be a nice guy. I mean, and it was a very nice thing that he did. I don't think he was doing it because we're not going to be able to sell these tickets or we don't have a great fan base.
Well, the point still stands. I mean, they're not. They're not a national team.
No, they're not.
And then you got the Patriots, who I'm sure a lot of their fans are like, hey, we've been there before. Like,
it's a business.
No, it's Boston. In some cities I'd say but Boston.
Yeah.
No, they'll trust me.
The bandwagon is awful nice in Boston. We'll put it that way.
Come on, man. The
city of bandwagoners. Well,
the sad thing is, and I mean, and if you're a Patriots fan, it's not sad. But for the sad thing is, the Patriots have become a national team. I mean, they have become so you will have Patriot fans going to that Super Bowl that don't live anywhere near New England, that are living out in California or Texas or
in the
Dakotas or Podunk, Idaho or Florida. I mean, look, I drive around Auburn and I see cars that have New England license plate frames and New England window stickers. I see people wearing Brady jerseys. They're a national team. It's like the Dolphins in the 80s and 90s with Marino. It's like the Packers. It's like the Packers with Brett Favre. You want to laugh?
Packers are still a national team.
That's what I'm saying. The Packers have become a national team. The Steelers there are certain NFL franchises that are national teams because of their run of success. And for the Packers in the 90s and the 2000s with Favre and now Rodgers have become a national team. The Dolphins because of in the 70s with the success they had, and then Marino in the 80s and 90s became a national team. And the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers are a national team because of what they did in the 70s. And then, continuing it in the 90s and the 2000s. So, the Patriots are at that level. So they'll get their fans there, whether they're from New England or not. They're going to be a ton of New England fans at that game.
The bandwagon will roll right in.
It will.
That was a nice little tangent that we went on.
Man.
Let's get back to the script here.
All right.
Chris, you bring up the Steelers. You and I had a nice little debate on Twitter on Sunday during the game.
It was classic.
Before we get to the play calling and kind of what we were going back and forth on, you notably do not like using this word when talking about sports. But would you say against the Jaguars that the Steelers choked?
No, they did not choke because they were down 21-0 and came back.
Tell people why you don't like that word.
I love the word choked. I use it all the time. I think you guys confused with my colleague Mike Dowd. He's the one who's not a fan of that word, okay? To me, to choke means you have a big lead. Now, you could say Jacksonville choked their lead because they were up 21-0. They only won by 3 points at the end. Although realistically it was 10 because they had to score the touchdown late there. But our debate is that I feel that if it's 4th and 1, You QB sneak every single time. You QB sneak. It is the best chance of success. You don't have to worry. The only thing you got to worry about is a fumbled snap or a horribly missed block. Okay. In any time when you have 4th and 1 and you're in the shotgun, I think the offensive coordinator should be shot. Okay, seriously. If it's 4th and 1 and you're running an outside running play, I'm sorry, you should be fired. If it's 4th and 1 and you're trying to throw the ball to a wide receiver, you should be shot. The only time you should be throwing on a 4th and 1 is maybe one of your tight ends or something right off the line of scrimmage where it's a very short, quick pass, okay? To me, you do QB sneak, or maybe a fullback dive into the line. You do not do a running play to the outside. You do not throw the ball to a wide receiver. Quarterback sneak is the best choice because all you got to do is just get the snap and go forward and follow your center and your guard. And hopefully, if all you need is about a foot or something, if you can't get that, even if he reaches the ball out over the lineman, he's going to get the first down. There's the less chance of not getting it when you do a QB sneak. And I showed you the stats. I found them on Twitter. Roethlisberger, when he does a QB sneak on 4th and 1, has made it 18 out of 19 times. I'm sorry, man. This ain't no regular season game. This is a playoff game. Everything is off the table. To me, if Ben Roethlisberger, who's what, 6'6", 300 pounds? Okay, he's not that big, I know. But if he can't handle a QB sneak, I'm sorry, man, then he shouldn't be playing football anymore. And even he admitted he should have done it.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. It's just ridiculous. What? 4th and 1, you QB sneak.
See, this is what happens when you root for Jay Cutler all year.
No, it's got nothing to do with it. I'm telling you, man, QB sneak every single time.
Here's the point that I made against Chris. I understand you rebutted and said, yeah, and which I agree with. You can't hold anything back. Because my concern is, I don't, and this is kind of, I sent Chris a story from earlier in the year of somebody asked Todd Haley why they don't do quarterback sneaks. Because Roethlisberger made some comment that he thinks that they should do it more. And Haley said, it's some teams just have a philosophical reason that they don't do it because they don't want to expose their quarterbacks to hits. And whether they did it earlier in the game the first time they had the 4th and short or the second time, especially against a physical defense like the Jags, they're going to go in there and try and pound Roethlisberger. And Big Ben, as big as he is, and Chris, you call him a horse, he is definitely he's tough as nails. But he has had as many injury issues as any quarterback in the league. And then, the other point is, Roethlisberger was killing them with the pass. Yeah. How many consecutive passes did he complete?
It's 4th and 1.
And if I know
4th and 1.
The Steelers fans are up in arms because it didn't work. Even though Smith-Schuster, 1, dropped it, 2 was being held the whole way, so there should have been a penalty.
Right.
But what is the Steelers' identity? They are a throwing team. Go with your identity. What are we good at? Go with your best.
No. Look, when they had the 4th and longs, the 4th and 12s, all those long where Ben threw it up in the end zone and Le'Veon Bell made an amazing catch and Antonio Brown made an amazing catch. Yes, in those situations when it's 4th and long, yes, obviously you throw the ball. But 4th and 1, QB sneak. And I'll tell you, for Todd Haley, how's his philosophy doing now? He's in the unemployment line, okay? Yeah, good philosophy, Todd. It costs you your job.
The philosophy that has him as a top offense the past how many years?
Yeah. Well, you know something? He's out of a job now.
He won't be. He'll get another job.
Yeah. Well, of course he'll find because it's a network. It's a fraternity. Of course he'll find it. Joe Philbin got another job for Christ's sake. Okay. Your offensive coordinator. Because
he was a great offensive coordinator.
No, he didn't even call the plays for the Packers.
That doesn't matter.
To me, offensive coordinator means you're calling the plays. Okay,
not everywhere though.
No, not everywhere. The
Saints have an offensive
right, and the
coordinator.
Dolphins don't do. The Dolphins are the same thing. I mean, Gase calls all the plays. But the thing is, 4th and 1, you do a QB sneak. I don't care. It's a playoff game. Your season's on the line. You got to get the first down. You got QB sneak. I'm sorry. No debate. QB sneak.
I'll tell you what. And I've crushed. I mean, I really don't like talking about my team when they're not involved in the playoffs. But as another, as a Packers fan with Aaron Rodgers, a passing team, if they were in that situation and they tried a quarterback sneak and it didn't work, or they gave it to a running back, I would be pissed. Put the ball on the right shoulder of your best player. That's what the Steelers did. It didn't work out. I think if they do a QB sneak and they don't get it, people are crushing them for that too. Because, Roethlisberger threw for how many yards? He completed so many passes in a row. He was killing them with the pass. I feel bad to an extent because this is how it is in football. Really, if what you do doesn't work, even if you can justify it, then you're going to get crushed. So, I mean, it's a results-based business, and they didn't get it.
But again, I'm going to say it. Roethlisberger on 4th and 1s, QB sneaks 18 out of 19
all it takes
times.
is one
18 out of 19.
All it takes is one non-conversion.
If you're a Steelers fan and you look at those stats and you say, hey, we got a quarterback, this isn't a little guy. This isn't Doug Flutie, okay? And Doug Flutie was a very tough guy that would make a QB sneak too. But I'm just saying that he wasn't a little short guy, a little skinny guy, okay? We're talking about a guy who is very big and whose body should be able to take one dive into the line, okay? And two for that game. I'm sorry, you run a QB sneak. 18 out of 19 times they've been successful with that play. I don't know why you don't do it in that situation in the playoff game when your season's on the line. I will not change my mind on that. All due respect, Justin, I'm sorry, you run a QB sneak. The Patriots do it with Brady. He's 40.
They don't do it anymore.
Let's see on Sunday. Let's see if it comes down to that. Let's see what happens. They do QB sneaks with Brady. I've seen it. Let's see if they do it again. We'll see if they do it on Sunday.
I read or saw something specifically this year that said the Patriots have totally dialed back on the quarterback sneaks because of Brady's age, because they're worried about him taking an unnecessary hit. Yeah. And you bring up Roethlisberger stats, Brady is as automatic as it gets. So, Robert, you've been pretty quiet during this this tussle.
I've been sitting it back, and
he's enjoying it.
Usually I have to carry Chris through the show, so it's nice
around.
to see him pick up the slack once.
Yeah.
I think you both have valid points. I mean, I think certainly with Big Ben, you raise a good point, Justin, with they are a pass, that's their identity, they're a passing team. I think where the sneak could come in handy for that is if they're picking up that it's going to be a passing play, then you have to throw something else at them. If they're going to read it that you're going to go out there and run a play action, or you're going to just drop back and throw a deep bomb, then come at them with something else. That said, if you run the QB sneak once, defense is going to key on that. They're going to be like 4th and 1. We know that this might be coming now, and then that opens up the pass more. I get the point about health and safety and all that too, and certainly New England has dialed it back a little bit with Brady this year in terms of QB sneaks, but coming from a guy who sees a team, and I've had to deal with Rick Dennison all year and how he handled 4th down situations. With Tyrod Taylor, who's not exactly a big quarterback. It's if you've got a guy that can get you in one instance, we're talking inches. In that case, yeah, you sneak it. Now, if it's a full yard, throw a pass play in there, or use Le'Veon Bell, who's supposedly your workhorse. That's one thing that we really haven't touched on. Is here's a guy who gets all this praise for being a patient runner and finding holes in all situations, and he's not your go-to guy on when you need a yard. So, for me, that there's a few different ways to approach it, and that was the crazy thing with Haley is that you've got a lot of different options at your disposal, but he didn't seem to use them properly on Sunday.
I think if the biggest thing that Haley should be crushed for is, who knows what. Who knows the truth behind this? Roethlisberger says one thing, somebody else could say something else. Apparently, Roethlisberger was not allowed to change the play at the line of scrimmage.
Wow.
He came out and basically said as much after the game, kind of threw Haley under the bus a little bit. That I have a problem with. Like you have a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback who's going to the Hall of Fame.
You have a veteran quarterback, regardless of the postseason success. Ben Roethlisberger's been a starting quarterback for 15 years.
Yeah, so if he let him go out there, give him a play call, and then if he doesn't like what he sees on defense, then yeah, let him make the change. So yeah, like apparently he didn't have the option to do a QB sneak. So for that, Haley deserves the criticism that he's receiving. He's not the only one in Pittsburgh receiving criticism because a lot of people are calling for Mike Tomlin's head.
Just going to say that.
What do you think the status of his tenure with the Steelers is at right now?
I think they make a mistake if they use this one game to can him. This is a team that has consistently been one of the best. It's been that way for a long time. They have really emphasized stability at the head coaching position. They don't give up on a guy just because of one bad year. They did that with Tomlin. You know, the Steelers under Tomlin had, you know, they had some a sluggish couple years there. So, you know, in my mind, you stay with them. Is this, you know, is it frustrating to lose that game? You know, a lot of people thought they'd be playing in the AFC title game. Sure, but, you know, there were a lot of different flaws exposed in that game. You know, you can pin it on Todd Haley. You can pin it on the defense, whatever, special teams, that onside kick, you know, garbage, whatever that was. I mean, there were failures on all sides of the ball. Now, do you pin that all on the coach for one game? I don't think so. But you know, there's been some chatter I got out there, I guess, that some of the minority owners have gone to the Rooney family and said, you know, let's give this a look. Maybe we have to bring in someone new. I don't think that's necessary just yet. I think he's had a good body of work over his career. I don't think it should be sullied by, you know, the performance in one game, which really, you know, his team didn't execute either. You know, the offense came out, played pretty sluggish. The defense wasn't that much better. Defense was terrible. Defense was terrible. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this was a team that the Bills gave up 10 points against. And here's the Steelers with a much better defense, and they give up 45. I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy.
See, I don't think the Steelers have a good defense.
Well,
especially with unfortunately with Shazier out.
Right. And on paper, I mean, they
have a lot of high picks,
right. But yeah, I don't know. I think firing Tomlin would be a mistake. He'd get scooped up pretty quickly, I would think. Yeah, just using one game to kind of throw everybody out. I mean, the stuff with Haley that people forget is that, you know, his relationship with Big Ben has been a little shaky from the get-go. And so now that his contract's up, it's, you know, what better time to let him go, especially after that game. So his situation's a little different. With Tomlin, I don't see any reason to fire him.
I agree.
You're welcome for that take.
I'll just add, you know, it's kind of tough to, you know, fire Mike Tomlin, not only because he has been a very, very successful head coach, but the timing of it. You know, we're at the championship round. Many of the better coaching candidates have already been scooped up. I mean, even you could say like the two guys who've been popular from New England, Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels. It's not official yet, but they've pretty well known kind of where they're going to end up. So it's just, you know, who are you going to replace him with is kind of why I would say they should just stick with Mike Tomlin. If they're going to make a decision, they need to make it much earlier in the process. We didn't talk much about the Saints, but I will, before we kind of move on, I want to get your guys' take on this one last point. Moving forward, like looking ahead to 2018, which team would you rather be in their position? The Steelers or the Saints?
Oh, the Steelers. I just think they have more pieces to build on. I mean, the Saints defense is pretty good and young. They have a lot of young pieces on that defense because they needed them. But you look at that offense and, you know, they have the running backs there. The receiving core is about one deep. You know, it's a little bit different in Pittsburgh. You know, much deeper receiving core there, and they've got Bell for now. You know, the quarterback situation's a little different. You know, Breeze. You know, there's chatter they might bring in. You know, another quarterback, maybe go younger. We'll see. I don't know if that's smart for Sean Payton, but
Breeze pretty much put an end to any talk that he won't be back. So
No, he's
Yeah.
coming.
he still has to agree to a contract, but
Right.
No,
right.
he said he's
well,
coming back.
Well, that's the part. Is do the Saints want him back?
Well, of course they do.
And we'll see.
If
Sean,
I'm the Saints, though, I'm drafting a quarterback in the top half of
Exactly.
the draft. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
He's 30. He's going to be 39. So
yeah.
what about you, Chris? Who would you rather have?
I like
Or who'd you-
I like the Saints. I mean, they got the camera, the running back. I mean, they had a great draft. They got an excellent. They improved their defense. I mean, really, the only thing you can say about the Saints is, they got a 39-year-old quarterback. But I mean, like I just said, you could draft young. I think the Saints have a great upside. You got a great coach in Peyton, Sean Payton. So I think you can still be a very good team next year with Drew Brees, and then you groom the young quarterback to take over in a couple of years. So I think for the Saints, the future is bright, very bright.
I'm actually going to agree with Chris on this one.
Fake news.
No, yeah, I think really that the concern with them is Drew Brees' age, but he just they kind of took a little bit of the load off his shoulders this year, and he had, you could argue, his best year in quite some time. And yeah, I think their overall roster is still trending upward. I think the Steelers have I think they've peaked a little bit. I mean, what are the chances that Antonio Brown continues to have the kind of run that he's been on? Like, at one of these years, he's not going to have as good of a year as he's been having. He's on like a historic pace. Le'Veon Bell, we don't know what his situation is. Are the Steelers going to pay him? Is he going to to
He's
threatening
not
to retire?
retiring. It's negotiable.
Are they going to? How mad is he going to be if they franchise?
Here's the
him
thing
again?
with the Steelers. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but here's the thing with the Steelers. Number one, they play in a division where realistically they should be winning that division every year. Okay, I mean, you're number one. You're playing the Browns twice a year. There's 2 wins right there. The Bengals. I'm sorry, but come on, the Bengals. I mean, there's another team that their games are basically gang wars, but basically Pittsburgh finds a way to win them. So there's another win or two right there. And then the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens are the only team that gives them any type of a realistic competition. But come on, as Justin knows, Joe Flacco's their quarterback, so that doesn't really. So right off the bat, they're playing in a very lackluster division. Okay, almost as bad as the AFC East. So right there, the Steelers are. I mean, they're sitting pretty because they're going to get in the playoffs because they're going to win their division right off the bat. So I like the Saints in the long run.
Yeah, I just think their defense, a lot of young, good players that will continue to get better, whereas the Steelers are so. It's weird to say with how they've kind of knowing their history, but it's weird to say they're still trying to figure out the whole defense thing in these recent years. All right, so championship round this upcoming Sunday. Jaguars travel to New England. Minnesota Vikings travel to Philadelphia. Any chance for, I guess I don't know what the odds are, but what I would say the 2 underdog teams, the Jaguars and the Eagles. Any chance for them to give us a Bortles full Super Bowl?
I'll make mine quick. Robert and I did our picks video a little while ago, and I said, look, Jacksonville on paper could win the game. Absolutely, they could win the game. They've got the ingredients to pull off the upset, no doubt about it. I mean, they got a good running game, they got an excellent defense, but I think the 2 factors that are going to play the ultimate role in New England winning is New England has Belichick and Brady. And Marone has done a very good job as coach of the Jaguars this year, but Belichick versus Marone, I'm taking Belichick, and Brady versus Bortles, I'm taking Brady. And to me, that will be the difference: the coaching and the quarterback, and of course, home field doesn't hurt either. So I'm going with New England. As for the NFC, I mean, I'm stunned that the Eagles are an underdog at home. I really am. I think Vegas just got really excited after that game on Sunday and made Minnesota the favorite. I mean, I don't know how often Philly is an underdog at home, especially in a game like this, okay? And yeah, they were an underdog last week. Robert pointed that out, and rightly so. But they won that game. So, and the Eagles, I think, have an excellent. All these teams have excellent defenses. So that's basically a draw. I just think the Eagles will be able. The home field is going to be a major factor in that game for them. And I think they got the running game, and Foles is decent enough where I like the Eagles. I mean, I hate to say it's an upset, but technically it is because they're the underdog. But and the Eagles have embraced the underdog role. We're in dog mass and everything, which kind of spooky in a way, but kind of cool too. So Philly and New England are my picks.
How do you know they weren't wearing those because they were inspired by the Citizen NFL podcast and,
Yeah.
and our dog takes?
It's a dog game.
Dog game. Yeah. Well, there we go. Eagles are a dog team, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, Chris and I agreed on the picks, Patriots and Eagles. With New England, I think the difference this week, Bortles did play, fairly well against Pittsburgh, but he's going up against Bill Belichick now, and it's a completely different defense. And, Belichick and Matt Patricia, I think, will come up with a game plan that really exposes Bortles' weaknesses. Unlike last week when the Steelers basically made him look like a top 10 quarterback. I think the Patriots should win that game. I think it'll be closer than what people think. Jacksonville's. I think they showed last week you shouldn't sleep on this team. They're legit. On the NFC side, Nick Foles just doesn't get any love after Carson Wentz goes down. And maybe rightfully so. He played a little shaky down the stretch. But last week, Atlanta goes in there. Atlanta's the favorite, playing pretty well defensively. They've got Matt Ryan. A lot of people thought they were going to win that game. And Foles just did his job. Went out there, steady, kept the offense moving as much as they could, got some points on the board, and the defense took care of the rest. And look, I think, as good as Case Keenum played last week, he's going up against a tough defense this week. And that Eagles defense, it reminds me a lot of the Jacksonville defense. They're quick, they're athletic, the secondary's good. He's going to have some trouble, I think, especially on the road. So I like the Eagles to come out of that game with the NFC title.
Well, I'm just going to make one quick one. I think with Foles, what we forget is that this guy didn't play for the longest time. And he gets thrown into the starting job, and I think it takes a little time to get your groove back, so to speak, to get back in rhythm with the especially with the starters on offense. Because when you're the second string quarterback, you're basically running the scout team in practice. You don't get much practice time with the number ones. Now that he's getting it. And I think that's going to help out. That he's got another week under his belt, and he's going to play better. So I think we might see peak Foles this weekend.
I mean, I hate to say it, but you bring up Case Keenum versus the Eagles defense. The Vikings defense is statistically as good as any unit in the league. They were kicking Drew Brees' butt in the first half.
Right.
Brees really only started moving the ball once a safety goes out. Then Xavier Rhodes gets hurt. Then Terrence Newman got out of the game. So, I don't know what I'm sure all those guys will be fine. I don't know the status of them, but I don't know. I like Case Keenum's odds of moving the ball against the Eagles defense better than I like Nick Foles moving against the Vikings defense, because that defense is no joke.
If the Vikings get turnovers, they'll win the game easily. I mean, that's the whole thing. If the Vikings defense does step up and play a lights out game, then yeah, the Vikings will win that game. I don't see the Vikings winning that game because of their offense. It'll be because of their defense.
I mean, at the end of the day, the Eagles scored 15 points last week. And
right.
More often than not, it's not going to be enough to get it done. It's not going to be enough to get it done if they play the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I'll tell you that much. So, one thing that I've seen a lot of talk about this week, kind of more from a bird's eye view, is you look at the quarterbacks who are still alive. Case Keenum, Nick Foles, Blake Bortles, and then obviously Tom Brady. But it's been kind of a weird recipe to have a successful team this year. Maybe put an asterisk next to the Eagles because obviously they aren't where they are because of Nick Foles. Just Carson Wentz got hurt. But do you guys think that teams around the league are gonna look at this and say, you know what, maybe we don't necessarily need a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees to win. Maybe we can get by with maybe a mediocre to average quarterback.
No, it's an aberration this year. That's it. That's it. It's an aberration. I want a franchise quarterback.
And you're still looking for one, right?
And we're still looking for one. Yeah, you're right. And
you'll get over that Tannehill soon enough.
Because the thing is, you might catch lightning in a bottle and have an excellent defense and a great running game, but you're not going to have that every time. So to me, franchise quarterback is the trump card, so to speak, and that's why New England is New England. I mean, think about New England. I mean, they've been doing this since 2001. There's only been two constants, Brady and Belichick, and to me, if they don't have Brady, Belichick does not anywhere near as many Super Bowls as without him. So, to me, you want a franchise QB.
I think there is a middle ground here that if you can find a guy, and I think back to when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl and they had Russell Wilson, and Wilson wasn't really to the level where Russell Wilson's at now, where he's throwing for 4,000 yards, and they're a pass happy offense because they don't really have a running game, and the whole offense goes through him. People forget that before that the Seahawks they leaned heavily on Marshawn Lynch and the running game, and they mixed in the read option, and Wilson was one of the top running quarterbacks in the league. And passing, they really tried to take the pressure off him. He would throw maybe no more than 30 passes a game, and in fact, they were more successful when he didn't. So, I think there is proof that model can work, but you have to have the right type of guy in there who, not like a Blake Bortles who is inconsistent, but someone who has consistency and can make the big throws when necessary. But there's a lot that goes into that. Seattle had a lights-out defense that year. They had one of the best rushing attacks in the league. So, the pressure on the quarterback is eased a little bit. Do these teams have that? Minnesota, their rushing attack is solid, but not great. The defense is pretty good, for sure. But they also have a great receiving core that people forget. And so you want a quarterback to really utilize that talent. Stephon Diggs had a great game outside of that touchdown catch. Obviously, that padded his stats a little bit, but he was having a decent game last week. So, I think that you have to have a guy. Case Keenum is a guy who's really shown that when he's with the right people, he can play. He's a decent quarterback, but I think he. There are exceptions, but overall, you want at least to have a good quarterback in there. Do you want a Trent Dilfer? Do you want a Joe Flacco situation? Probably not. But
Eli.
Well, yeah, but I think there is room to wiggle if you can put together a solid team. Good quarterback. Not Tom Brady, not even an Aaron Rodgers type or, Drew Brees. Just a quarterback that, can make the big throws when counted upon, and you have a good running game and solid defense. I think that's a recipe for success.
Man, if the Vikings had a legit, top-tier quarterback, that team would be something else. Because they have everything else. Case Keenum is the, kind of question mark on the team, and he had a good year, but... Kind of wonder what happens with Teddy Bridgewater if his injury doesn't happen last year, or the way Sam Bradford kind of was playing before he got hurt.
Yeah. Well, look at the Eagles and what they've done with Wentz in his second year and that defense, and their rushing attack isn't bad. They've got LeGarrette Blount, they've got a few different guys back there. Chris's boy Jay Ajayi's back there now, so. That team, and Wentz is no slouch. Wentz is a great quarterback. He showed that this year. He's on pace to win the MVP award, in my opinion. And, so that shows what you can do when you develop a quarterback along that, many people were kind of skeptical about at first. And then, he has success in his second year. But yeah, I think they're going in the right direction.
Okay, so we've talked plenty about the playoffs so far. Let's talk about a team that's no longer in the playoffs. Buffalo Bills wasted no time after firing Rick Dennison, offensive coordinator. Hired a new one. We talked about it at length on the special edition of the Citizen Sports Weekly on Friday. And this was not a name that I think was in any of our heads. Bills hired Brian Dable as their new offensive coordinator. So just a little rundown of his coaching resume. Spent extensive time with the Patriots. He was there in various positions from 2000 to 2006. Returned in 2013. Worked there until 2016. Again, kind of taken on various positions. He's also had done some time previously as an offensive coordinator with the Browns, the Dolphins.
Yep, 2011.
Most recently, he was with the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year it happened like a week ago, but he was with Alabama as their offensive coordinator this past season. Born in Welland, Ontario, a University of Rochester graduate. So, good for him. Last time he was an offensive coordinator was with the Chiefs in 2012. They were the fifth ranked team in rushing, 27th in passing. That was with Matt Castle.
Yeah.
The last season of the Romeo Crennel era.
Who can forget?
Yeah, well, many have. Guys, what are your thoughts on the hiring? Obviously, Chris, you know him from with the Dolphins, and then Robert, kind of your thoughts for what he can do for the Bills.
Well, it's about his lineage. That's really what it comes down to. He's been with Belichick. He's been with Saban.
Wait, what were you gonna say there, Chris?
Satan. Saban. Same difference. And he's got
Freudian slip.
No, it wasn't Freud. It was intentional. So he's got a good resume. The guy's got on paper. This is what you want. The question is what his style or his system, will it fit with what the Bills' talent is? That's what it's going to come down to. And of course, we've discussed about Tyrod Taylor's future. So does this mean that the Bills might be going in a different direction at quarterback? So we'll see.
I love the hire. I think you look back to his offensive coordinator jobs, especially with that dog Miami Dolphins team back in 2011.
Wow, for half the season he was the offensive coordinator. I think he was the interim because when in 2011, real quick, Sperano got canned and they canned some other coaches, and I think Dabo was the interim. So
Yeah.
But
I think his background, especially in the college ranks, and his work with New England will suit him well. And the nice thing about this setup for him, compared to his past offensive coordinator positions, is that there's pieces there for him to use. He comes into a team that whether it's Tyrod Taylor or somebody else at quarterback. You have a team with LaShawn McCoy, easily one of the best running backs in the game. So we'll see how he can fit that into his game plans, how he uses him. There's certainly some question marks. Obviously, they have some positions in need outside of quarterback, wide receiver, add another running back to spell McCoy. But he has some pieces to work with there that he can use to his advantage, and I think it's a good fit. Plus, he's got roots, and not that means much usually in football, but he knows the Bills' pain, so he knows what it meant to make the playoffs finally, and where they want to get to. So we'll see if he'll be better than Dennison was last season.
Well, judging by kind of the opinion on Dennison, he can't be much worse.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see them get somebody with a little more specific quarterbacking, coaching background. Because a lot of these, I know he was with the Patriots. I think he was like a tight ends coach for at one point, wide receivers coach. Not saying he can't coach quarterbacks. Mike McCarthy was not a quarterback guy. Ben McAdoo was not a quarterback guy, and yet they kind of took on roles of grooming quarterbacks. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting hire. It was definitely, for me, out of left field. So we'll see. Guys, anything else you want to bring up? We're at about 45 minutes.
So, Chris, you ready to trade Landry for 2 first-rounders yet?
if you want to give us 2 first-rounders, we'll give you Landry.
I wouldn't give you 2 first-rounders, but some sucker would.
We'll see. We'll see.
We all know where this road is going. Jarvis Landry's going to play for the Patriots.
Oh.
No.
Chris, what would be, because you've said Jarvis Landry is, I believe you said he's your favorite Dolphin.
He is.
What? How would you fathom that if he goes to the hated New England
Because
Patriots?
New England's not going to pay him that money. He wants money. Okay, he wants his payday, and New England is not going to give him that payday. He'll go someplace else for more money. Mark my words. He wants 14, 15 million. Okay, around that span. New England is not going to give him that.
I mean,
much.
for a team that spent all that money on Stephon Gilmore,
no way.
I don't know.
No way. New England paid that much money for him. No. It'll be somebody else.
All right, we'll save that clip for when he inevitably signs with the Patriots.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We'll run it back then. Until then, this has been another edition of the Citizen NFL Podcast. I'm Justin Ritzel for Robert Harding and Chris Sciria. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.